Hi, I'm Marla. Last Christmas, my mother-in-law raised her glass, smiled across the table, and said, "Your sister and I will move into your new condo next week." My husband didn't say a word. Everyone laughed, except me. That night, I realized something. In this family, silence isn't peace. It's permission. So when Tuesday came and they showed up with their suitcases, smiling like queens, I didn't argue. I just let them walk straight into the trap they built for me. Before we dive in, tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? Because by the time this story ends, you'll understand why sometimes the quietest woman in the room is the one you should fear the most. Christmas Eve always carried a strange weight in our house, equal parts tradition, tension, and tired performance. I spent the day in the kitchen, prepping the ham glazed with brown sugar, mashed sweet potatoes, green bean casserole, everything Delora once deemed too bland, before I learned to cook it her way. By 7 p.m., the dining room glowed under soft lights, candles flickering, table set to impress. Grant opened a bottle of Pinot Noir while I adjusted the centerpiece for the third time. I wasn't nervous, just bracing. Hosting always meant managing more than the meal. It meant navigating landmines dressed in sequins and sprayed on smiles. Serena waltzed in first, late as always, wearing a dress that screamed attention and perfume that overstayed its welcome. Delora followed in a velvet blazer and that smug smile she wore like a crown. The four of us sat down. Forks clinked against china. Small talk ricocheted. Weather, parking, who made what. I nodded, laughed when required, passed the rolls. From the outside, it probably looked like a perfect family gathering. Inside, I was counting each second. Halfway through dinner, as I poured myself a second glass of wine, Delora cleared her throat. That sound alone was enough to hush the room. She smiled, not kindly, but with the satisfaction of someone about to checkmate. "Well," she said, laying her fork down neatly, "your sister and I will move into your new condo next week." The world stopped. My hand froze mid-pour. I looked at her, then at Serena, who didn't flinch. She smirked. "Grant?" He kept chewing, not a word, not a blink. The silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, the kind that crushes something in your chest. I took a slow sip. Let the wine sit on my tongue longer than usual. Then I swallowed and set the glass down carefully. "Thanks for the heads up," I said. "Tuesday works." I almost didn't recognize my own voice. It was calm, level, like I hadn't just been ambushed in my own home. But inside, something cracked. Not loud, just enough for air to slip through and remind me I could still breathe, on my own. Delora beamed like I'd handed her the keys to heaven. Serena giggled and reached for more stuffing. Grant didn't look at me. He reached for the salt. After that, conversation flowed again, like nothing happened. Delora started talking about paint swatches and curtain rods. Serena joked about which closet she'd take. Grant added nothing, but nodded along. I watched them. Watched myself pretending to be present. It was surreal, like I'd stepped out of my own skin and left a polite shell behind. They talked about my home like I wasn't sitting at the head of the table. "I think Serena and I can share the ensuite," Delora mused. "It's spacious enough and we can rearrange the living room. Your sectional's far too modern anyway." I didn't answer, just nodded slightly and refilled my glass. "You don't mind us bringing over a few of our things this weekend, do you?" Serena asked, tilting her head like she actually expected me to say no. "Of course not," I murmured, my voice smooth as satin. "I'll make sure the guest room's ready by Tuesday." She smiled like she'd won something, but I watched my reflection in the wine glass, clear, still, and cold. After dessert, they lingered, too long, talking about their plans, their new routines, which gym they'd join. Grant helped Delora with her coat, but still hadn't looked me in the eyes. When the door finally clicked shut behind them, I didn't move right away. I stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door like it had the answers I couldn't say out loud yet. The condo wasn't just real estate. It was mine, bought with the inheritance from my father, the man who taught me that respect is something you protect, not beg for. I walked into the kitchen. The dishes sat untouched. Wine glasses stained with their fingerprints. The scent of cinnamon still hung in the air, but it made me nauseous now. I took my glass, walked to the window. The city lights blinked below. Cars moved like tiny stars, unaware. "Tuesday works," I said again, this time to the night. My voice was different now, not a statement, a promise. They thought I'd surrendered. They thought the good little hostess would tuck her tail and make room. But Tuesday would be something else entirely. By Tuesday morning, I had already changed the locks. The handyman arrived just after 6 a.m. I greeted him at the door with a mug of coffee in one hand and the new set of deadbolts in the other. He was younger than I expected, polite but curious. "You expecting trouble?" he asked, glancing down at the hardware. I smiled. Not the kind that invites conversation, just enough to say, "Let it be." Just guests who like surprises. He chuckled. I didn't. Once he left, I moved through the condo quietly. The sun had started to rise, bathing the living room in light so bright it felt theatrical. The floor-to-ceiling windows were spotless. The marble countertops gleamed. Every corner of this place had once felt like a future I built for us, for Grant and me. Now it felt like a fortress, mine. I took down the floral print Serena loved, packed away the old Afghan Delora always claimed felt like home, replaced the pillows, wiped every surface. I wasn't cleaning, I was reclaiming. By 8 a.m., I had positioned 2 small security cameras, one in the entryway, one near the guest room door. Nothing intrusive, just enough to document what came next. I opened a locked drawer in my desk and pulled out the folder. It held everything: the deed, the guest agreement, the legal clause that might as well have been a sword. The memory came back like a flash, 3 years ago, sitting across from my father's attorney. He had looked me straight in the eye when I asked if the condo would ever become community property. "It's separate property, Mrs. Vexler. No one can touch it, not even your husband." At the time, I'd found that offensive. Why would I want to keep anything from Grant? Now, I was grateful for every layer of distance that one sentence had built. The hours passed slowly. I moved with purpose, but I wasn't rushing. Tension doesn't always explode, it simmers. And I had learned to let it. At exactly 21:58 p.m., I saw them pull up through the window, Delora's silver SUV, followed by Grant in his truck. Serena stepped out first, dragging a bright pink suitcase behind her, like she was arriving at a weekend spa. Delora followed, sunglasses on, holding a potted orchid. Grant stayed near the curb, pretending to check his phone. I stood just beyond the front door when the knock came, sharp, then a jostling sound. The doorknob didn't turn. "Marla, honey, did you change the locks?" Delora called out, like she'd just discovered an expired milk carton. I opened the door slowly, cool air brushing against my skin. "Yes," I said evenly. "Tuesday works, remember?" Delora blinked. Serena laughed, already pulling her suitcase forward. "You're hilarious." "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "But before anyone unpacks, we need to go over something." They entered with the confidence of people who thought the conversation was already over. Grant trailed in last, eyes flicking between us, like he was hoping none of this was real. The folder sat neatly on the kitchen island. I opened it without a word and laid out each page one by one. The deed in my name. The guest agreement with clear temporary terms. the clause about unauthorized residency. Delora's expression shifted, just barely, but I saw it. The flicker of confusion before pride reassembled her face. "What is this supposed to mean?" she asked, reaching for the papers. "That you're welcome to visit," I said, "but this home isn't open for permanent stays." "You're joking," Serena said, her tone sharp now. "We had an agreement." "No, you made a plan," I corrected. "I wasn't part of it." Grant finally spoke. "Marla, this isn't necessary." I looked at him then, really looked. Same man I married, same man who said nothing at dinner, still hoping I'd play nice. "It is," I replied. Delora crossed her arms. "Are you threatening your family?" I stepped closer, close enough for her to see my face, to feel how calm I really was. "No, I'm setting boundaries, something this house never had before." The silence that followed was thick. Serena huffed, pulling her suitcase back toward the door. "This is insane." Grant looked between us all, then at me. "You didn't have to humiliate them." "I didn't," I said. "They did that to themselves." Delora didn't respond. She turned on her heel and left, the orchid still in her hand. Serena muttered something under her breath, something I didn't bother deciphering, before slamming the door behind her. Grant lingered. For a second, I thought he might stay, might try. But instead, he walked out without a word. When the door clicked shut, I let the silence settle. Not grief, not guilt, just breath. I walked to the counter and placed the new keys down gently. The sound of metal against stone echoed through the room. Small, sharp, final. It was louder than any argument we'd ever had. The phone started ringing before sunrise, and it wasn't a call I wanted to answer. I let it buzz twice, then 3 times, until the vibrations stopped. When I turned it over on the nightstand, there were 5 missed calls from Grant. Then a text popped up, centered on the lock screen like a blinking dare, from Delora Family Meeting. 10 a.m., don't be late. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling. My body was still, but my mind moved fast. This wasn't a meeting. This was an ambush dressed up in passive-aggressive politeness. And still, I got up. Some wars don't need yelling. They just need a witness who refuses to flinch. By 9:15, I was in my car, engine humming, hands cool on the wheel. Delora was staying at Grant's parents' old place in the suburbs, neutral ground, in theory. But the second I pulled into the driveway, the weight settled on my chest, like it used to every Christmas, every birthday, every time she hosted, and I was reminded of who held court. Grant opened the door before I even knocked. His eyes looked tired. He didn't smile. "They're already at the table," he said. "They?" I asked. He looked past me toward my car. "Serena's here too." Of course she was. Inside, the air smelled like reheated bacon and entitlement. Delora sat at the head of the dining table, perfectly centered, like a judge preparing to rule. Serena leaned against the kitchen counter, coffee mug in hand, watching me like I was a contestant walking into a game I didn't know I'd entered. "Have a seat," Delora said. Her voice was sharp, clipped, and entirely without warmth. I didn't sit. "You've embarrassed this family, Marla. What you did was cruel and ungrateful." I looked at her, then Grant, then back. "You made plans about my home without me," I said calmly. "I just clarified ownership." "You blindsided your husband," she snapped. "You've put this family in a position where we can't trust you." I could feel it, Serena's smirk widening just behind me. "You're not the victim here," I said. "You assumed. You manipulated." I drew a line. Delora slid a manila envelope across the table. "This is a draft complaint. We're submitting it to the HOA. Hostility toward family, disrupting neighborhood harmony." Grant looked shocked. What is this?" Serena chimed in, ever the echo. "People are talking, Marla. This isn't just drama, it's reputation. You've made a scene. I felt something inside me coil tighter, but I stayed still. You've spent your whole life teaching Grant that love means silence, I said, slowly. I refuse to be another student. Dolores' fist slammed the table, rattling her coffee cup. Don't you dare speak to me like that in my house. I met her eyes. Then don't call me to one if all you plan to do is humiliate me. I turned, reached for my coat on the back of the chair, and walked out. No storming, no slamming. Just presence, then absence. Outside, the air felt sharper. My breath came faster, but I didn't let it show. I slid into my car, closed the door, and just as I was about to start the engine, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You shouldn't have done that? Some secrets aren't meant to be uncovered. I stared at it. A chill, not of fear but recognition, passed over me. This wasn't family anymore. This was something else. Back at home, I moved through the condo quietly. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt taut, like a string pulled too tight. I poured myself a glass of wine, held it, but didn't drink. My reflection in the window stared back. Tired? Yes, but not broken. Changed. I'm not angry, I said aloud, more to myself than anyone. I'm awake, and they don't know what to do with that. I set the glass down, opened my laptop, and searched my contacts until I found it. My father's old lawyer. I didn't press call yet, but just hovering over the number made me feel a little steadier. I glanced at the calendar hanging on the kitchen wall. Still Tuesday. I whispered to the room, or maybe to myself, it's still Tuesday. I guess some things take longer to move out than boxes. The HOA letter arrived 2 days later, folded neatly, smelling faintly of her perfume. I held it in the morning light that filtered through the blinds, the world outside clear, bright, unassuming. But the envelope in my hand was anything but. It was a weapon wrapped in paper. I sat on the edge of the couch in the condo I bought years ago with my father's money, a property I believed was mine in every sense. I peeled the flap and unfolded the pages. The Homeowners Association logo stared back at me. Bold letters, official tone. Complaint for hostile behavior and domestic disturbance. My name printed in all caps. Below it, in her elegant script, the words, Delora Vexler. I closed my eyes for a moment. This wasn't about the lock I changed or the guest agreement I presented. This was reputation warfare. They weren't upset, I took control. They were angry, I reminded them I had it. Scene 1. The setup for isolation. I drove to the HOA office around noon. The Texas sun surprisingly gentle after the tension of the morning. The parking lot was half full. As I walked through the automatic doors, I passed a gallery of beige trophies on display. Awards for Neighbor of the Year, Community Harmony. It felt like a museum of expectations. The receptionist looked at me with thin-lipped sympathy when I told her I'd come to discuss the letter. They just want everyone to feel safe, Mrs. Vexler, she said, her voice polite but distant. She handed me a copy of the complaint form and asked me to wait. I sat in the lobby, the tick of the clock louder than any words. Silence turned into its own kind of pressure. No one shouted, no one slammed doors. They just looked away. I kept thinking of women I know, quiet, strong, just focused on keeping everything together, only to find themselves subtly erased. That's the sting of polite exclusion. It isn't violent, it's invisible, but it kills. Scene 2. The betrayal confirmed. I called Grant later that afternoon. He answered on the second ring. I could hear the hum of his truck idling. He sounded as if he'd been pulled out of sleep. We need to talk, I said. Marla, I tried. Mom just wants you to apologize. Make it go away, he stammered. That's when I realized he wasn't neutral. Inaction counts as siding. This was the truth I'd been avoiding, the one that hurt more than the letter. "You're not trying to make peace," I said. "You're trying to make me small." Silence. Then the crackle of the engines starting. Scene 3. The turning point. By evening, I found Serena's post. A photo of my condo, strategically taken, golden hour lighting, the view of the skyline behind it. Caption: "Family is everything, especially when they share their blessings." Hundreds of likes, comments praising how I'd welcomed my sister and mother-in-law. I stared at my own home on Instagram and felt odd, like someone else's life had been filtered and posted. They were rewriting my story while I was still living it. That was the moment I stopped being patient. Scene 4. The emotional shift. Earlier that week, I retrieved a file from my father's cedar chest, property transfer documents, emails between him and the attorney. I remembered my father's voice when he said, "The kindest people are the easiest to erase, unless they keep records." I printed the deeds, the incorporation papers, even the guest agreement clauses. I stacked them like armor by my desk lamp. Later that night, I sent Grant a text. "If she keeps this up, I'll make the next Tuesday one she won't forget." I didn't hear back. My wine glass from Chapter 1 sat near my laptop, now half empty, untouched. For the first time, it felt like mine in every sense. The keys on the counter, the ones I used to lock the condo, clinked when I placed them down. That sound felt more final than any conversation or confrontation. I wasn't just reclaiming a house, I was reclaiming my voice. I didn't sleep well. I lay in the dark and thought, this isn't just real estate. It's about respect. It started with one email, a thread I wasn't supposed to see. I was combing through my dad's old legal files again, partly out of habit, partly because something inside me wouldn't let it rest. I wanted a paper trail, sure, but I didn't expect to find a breadcrumb trail instead. One that led to an old shared inbox he used when managing the estate years ago. I logged in. The password hadn't changed, and there it was, a subject line buried under other emails. Condo transfer, urgent discussion. I clicked. At first glance, it seemed harmless. Just a series of emails between Grant, Delora, and Serena. The messages were dressed in politeness, but they carried a familiar underlying venom. "Marla will understand once it's done," Grant wrote. "She trusts us." Delora replied, "The trust paperwork can be handled quietly. No need to burden her." Serena, "I'll keep her distracted. Just loop me in when signatures are needed." The cursor blinked in front of me, waiting for something. Maybe rage, maybe despair. But I just sat there, silent. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just read, over and over. Scene by scene, betrayal took form. But it wasn't loud or obvious, it was calculated, subtle, like someone slowly pushing you out of your own story and handing the pen to someone else. Then I noticed something odd. A name at the bottom of one email. Richard Alton, my father's old attorney. He had been CC'd. I scrolled. There it was. Please note, the condo in question was purchased under Marla Vexler's individual account using inherited funds. Any attempts to retitle this property without her express written consent may be deemed fraudulent. Dated December 4th. 3 weeks before Christmas. 3 weeks before they sat at my table, passed the stuffing, and smiled like nothing was being plotted behind my back. I leaned back in my chair, palms flat against my thighs. My voice, quiet but certain, filled the room. It wasn't just about space. It was about erasing me from my own life. The rain tapped gently on the window. The condo lights glowed softly, casting shadows along the floor. I stood and pulled the documents one by one from the inbox, saving them to my encrypted drive, then printing them, feeding the pages through the printer like they were pieces of me I was reclaiming. When the last sheet printed, I slid them all into a manila folder and sealed it. The sound of the flap closing was final. The echo of my condo keys hitting the counter, sharp, metallic, followed like punctuation. This time I wasn't locking anyone out. I was locking the truth in. Hours passed. I made tea but didn't drink it, poured wine but didn't sip. I watched the rain shift from drizzle to steady rhythm. And then, just after 8, headlights flicked across the front wall. Grant's truck. I didn't move right away. I let the knock come to me. Slow, hesitant. He always knocked like that when he was unsure, when he knew I'd seen through him. I opened the door halfway. The air outside was cold, smelling of damp leaves and mud. "You've been quiet," he said, eyes lowered. "You've been busy," I replied. He looked past me like he wanted to step in but knew better. His hands were shoved in his jacket pockets, nervous energy dancing in his stance. I didn't want you to feel blindsided." I held his gaze. "You helped blindfold me." He shifted. "It wasn't like that." I didn't answer. He added, "You're not being fair, Marla. Mom's just trying to make sure you don't make mistakes." I tilted my head. "Like trusting you?" He flinched. Just a flicker, but enough. That was the moment I realized we weren't a partnership anymore. We were opposing sides of something neither of us had the language to fix. He looked down, then back up. "This doesn't have to be ugly." I smiled, flat. "It already is." He turned and left. No goodbye, no door slam. Just the sound of his boots in the rain and the truck pulling out, fading into the street. I stood in the doorway a moment longer, then shut the door and locked it. Twice. Scene. The inner voice. Back at my desk, I opened a blank document, titled it, Affidavit, Property Ownership. I didn't feel victorious, just steady. "There's a moment in every war when you stop asking for peace," I said aloud. "That's when you start winning." I didn't need their permission to protect what was mine. I needed proof. I had that now. And when you have proof, you don't shout. You file. The next morning, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to let them see what they'd built. When they showed up again, they didn't knock. They never thought they had to. It was early, maybe 8:30. I had just finished a second cup of coffee and was about to step into the shower when I heard the sound. The unmistakable metallic scrape of a key sliding into a lock. But not my lock, not the one I'd changed. For a moment I froze. Then quietly, I walked to the front door, stopping just before the hallway opened into the living room. The latch clicked once, twice, and the door swung open. They walked in like they owned the place. Delora first, suitcase in hand, followed by Serena, all fake cheer and perfume. Grant trailed behind, carrying boxes, his expression unreadable. Their laughter faltered when they saw me standing there, calm, barefoot, mug in hand. "I told you Tuesday worked," I said, my voice soft, steady. "I never said you'd stay." Delora blinked, setting her bag down slowly. "You don't get to decide who belongs in this family," she said, her tone smooth, practiced, the same one she used at every church function and charity gala. I smiled. "You're right, but I do decide who lives in my home." Her jaw tightened. Serena shifted her weight, trying to act casual, but her eyes were darting between us, like she could sense the shift, the quiet rearranging of power. Grant cleared his throat. "Can we just talk about this?" "Oh, I'd love that," I said. "Why don't we start with the claim you filed yesterday?" Delora's eyes flicked up sharply. "What claim?" "The one you submitted through Grant to the HOA. The one listing both of you as invited occupants." I paused, letting the words sink in. "They sent me a courtesy copy. You might want to pick a better lawyer next time, one who doesn't use scented envelopes." Her mouth opened slightly. "You..." How did you? Paper trails, I said, setting my mug down on the counter. They don't just protect you, they expose everyone else. Serena scoffed. You think waving papers makes you powerful? No, I said. I think honesty does. You should try it sometime. Grant stepped forward, voice low, uncertain. Mom, this has gone too far. Delora spun toward him like he'd slapped her. She's turning you against me. No, I said gently. You did that yourself. Her lips trembled, but she masked it quickly, straightening her coat like a general preparing for a retreat. You've become cruel, Marla. I met her gaze. No, I just stopped pretending kindness was the same as obedience. The silence that followed was thick. You could almost hear the air shift, the sound of a family system collapsing under its own weight. Grant dropped the box he was holding. It hit the floor with a hollow thud. I can't do this anymore, he said softly. Delora turned to him again, furious. You ungrateful boy. After everything I've done. He didn't respond. He just stood there, eyes glassy, watching me. Maybe he finally saw it. The way she wrapped her control in guilt, her affection in conditions. I picked up the manila folder from the coffee table and laid it gently in front of her. You wanted a family war, I said. I prefer paperwork. Inside were copies of everything. Emails, property deeds, HOA notices. Proof. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Delora looked down at the folder, then at me. You recorded us? She hissed. No, I said. You performed for me. I just hit save. Serena gasped. You're insane. Maybe, I said, but I'm free. Grant exhaled, stepping back as if the air itself had shifted between us. Delora's face was pale now, the composure slipping, the edges cracking. She looked smaller somehow. For the first time, I thought, she understood what silence sounds like when it doesn't belong to her. No one spoke for a long time. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator, steady, grounding. Then Delora grabbed her bag, muttering something under her breath, and stormed toward the door. Serena followed, tossing one last glare over her shoulder. But even that lacked conviction. When the door finally closed, the condo went still again. I stood there for a while, breathing in the emptiness. The faint trace of Delora's perfume lingered in the air, the same scent that had clung to the HOA letter. It smelled expensive, artificial, suffocating. Finally leaving something behind, I whispered. I turned toward the dining table. One chair was still pulled out, the one she'd sat in during Christmas dinner. I walked over and pushed it in slowly, the wooden legs scraping softly against the floor. The condo was quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I poured another cup of coffee, still warm from the pot, and looked out the window. The rain had stopped. Maybe, I thought, peace wasn't a gift. Maybe it was a boundary. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for it to be given. On Monday morning, I walked into my lawyer's office with a box full of proof and a name they wouldn't forget. The receptionist recognized me by now. She gave a small nod and ushered me back to a room that smelled faintly of pine cleaner and dusted leather chairs. I placed the box on the table without a word. Inside were the printouts, emails, audio transcripts, and HOA notices, every thread Delora had pulled, and every knot I'd untangled. My attorney, Carla Fields, sat down across from me, sharp as glass, but not unkind. She took one glance at the folder labeled Occupancy Claim Refuted and raised an eyebrow. You've been busy, she said. I was tired of being surprised, I replied. We spent the next 45 minutes reviewing everything. Carla flipped through the emails, her pen tapping a soft rhythm against the table. This one here, she said, pointing at an email Grant had forwarded to Delora. Subject line, transfer plans. Keep quiet for now. This alone undermines any claim she's trying to make. and the HOA letter helps. She paused, looking up. You're not interested in making this public, are you? I shook my head. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I just want control of what's already mine. Carla nodded. Good. That makes you reasonable. And dangerous. I smiled faintly. Paper's stronger than performance. By the time I left her office, the clouds had begun to shift, not fully clearing, but no longer pressing. The kind of sky that says something is about to break, but not yet. Back at home, I barely had time to pour myself a glass of water before the notifications started lighting up my phone. Delora had started making calls, neighbors, bridge club friends, even the woman from the HOA welcome committee. The rumor trail was obvious. I was unstable, vindictive, possibly drinking again. The same tired script women like her always relied on. Discredit before you're disarmed. I didn't respond. Instead, I compiled the documents into a clean PDF and sent them, quietly, to the HOA board, copied Grant, and added one extra address, Serena's work email. No caption, no message, just facts. I let truth carry its own weight. That evening, I drafted a note to Grant, not accusing, just steady. I reminded him that I still had the voicemail from Christmas Eve, where Delora joked about keeping the condo in the family, whether she likes it or not. I told him I'd rather not use it. I also told him I believed in his better judgment, even if it had arrived late. Then I hit send. By Tuesday morning, the air had changed again. My neighbor, Diane, waved at me on the way to her car, not cautiously, but like she always used to. Small things like that meant more than they should have. Respect, once cracked, didn't mend easily, but maybe it could be repaired. Later that afternoon, I saw Grant's car slow near the curb, then roll. Honor passed. He didn't park, didn't come in. I waited. That night, I got the text. Can we talk? I didn't answer right away. I went for a walk instead, through the nearby park where the grass always needed cutting and the benches leaned slightly to one side. I let my thoughts settle. When I got back, I typed a single sentence. Your mother doesn't get to make the rules anymore. Neither do you. No response. But the next morning, I heard from Carla. The notice had been filed, legal and formal. Request for immediate HOA mediation and preliminary injunction regarding wrongful occupancy and harassment. I'd asked her not to serve it loudly, just let it slide across their doorstep like any other letter. That evening, Delora made her next move, a final attempt at control. She called Grant over for a private conversation. I knew because he told me afterward. She's scared, he said, voice low. She said you're manipulating me. What did you say back? I asked. He looked at me then, really looked. I said you weren't manipulating anyone. You were just showing the truth. I didn't hug him. I didn't thank him. Some truths don't need a reward. They just need to be said aloud. Later that night, I walked through the condo with the lights dimmed low. Everything was in its place, not tidy, but intentional. I paused by the dining room table, the same chair, still pushed in from the day Delora left. The silence around it didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt earned. I sat for a minute, then leaned back and whispered, "This is mine. I never asked permission." Somewhere deep in my chest, I felt a door finally click shut, not slammed, just sealed. Thursday arrived, and the living room was thick with unspoken rules and old grudges. I had moved the furniture slightly. Nothing drastic, just enough to remind them that this was my space now. The dining table, polished and set for 6, looked more like a negotiation table than a place for family. The same chair Delora had claimed every Christmas sat at the far end, untouched. They came in slowly, Grant first, his shoulders tight, followed by Delora with Serena at her side. A HOA representative, Mr. Klein, entered next, clipboard in hand, neutral expression intact. Carla, my lawyer, already sat beside me, her presence like a lighthouse in fog. No one touched the coffee I'd brewed. "I want to start by stating the facts," I said, my voice level, clear. 3 weeks ago, I discovered evidence of an unauthorized occupancy claim made on this property. It was filed under false pretenses, without my consent. Delora crossed her arms. "You make it sound criminal. We're family." "That's the problem," I replied. I turned to Mr. Klein, handing him a slim folder. "Inside, you'll find copies of the HOA bylaws, the original title of the property in my name, and the email threads between Mrs. Wexler and several family members attempting to justify her residency." He opened it. Delora didn't. Serena leaned in with a smirk. "You really think this little ambush will work?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze. "I know it will." Delora laughed, short, brittle. "Grant, are you really going to let her humiliate your own mother in front of strangers?" Grant looked exhausted. "Mom, you lied to me. You told me she agreed. You said this was settled." "You were never supposed to choose," she snapped. "You were supposed to support." I let the silence stretch. Then, I placed another folder on the table, this one thinner, but heavier. "In here are the phone recordings, transcripts, from Christmas to last week." Carla leaned forward. "We're not playing games, Mrs. Wexler. This is a formal record for HOA review. Your actions have violated multiple occupancy and harassment clauses." Delora looked between us, finally blinking. "You set this all up," she muttered. "No," I said softly. "You did. I just wrote it down." Serena stood abruptly. "This is disgusting. You're making us look like criminals." "No," Carla said calmly. "You're making yourselves look like that. We're just giving it a frame." Mr. Klein cleared his throat. "The HOA has reviewed the documentation in advance. The committee has decided to support Ms. Wexler's claim of sole ownership and violation of occupancy bylaws." Delora's chair creaked. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," I replied. "It just makes me free." She stood slowly, as if the weight of it all had finally landed. She looked at Grant for rescue, but he didn't move. Not toward her, not toward me. Just sat there, eyes lowered. Mr. Klein packed his papers. Carla stood next. "We'll file the formal notice of removal within the week, unless, of course, you'd prefer to leave voluntarily." Delora didn't answer. Serena pulled at her coat. When the door closed behind them, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Grant lingered. "I didn't know it would go this far," he said. "I did," I replied. "That's why I planned." He looked around the room, like seeing it for the first time. "You're different now." "I was always like this," I said. "You just never noticed." After he left, I stood in the doorway, the same place I had watched them arrive weeks ago. The perfume was gone now, no floral trace in the air, just pine cleaner and peace. I walked to the dining room, where the same old chair waited, Delora's. I pulled it back slightly, then pushed it in with care, not out of deference, out of closure. "This is mine," I whispered, "and I didn't steal it. I just stopped giving it away." Friday morning felt strangely quiet. The condo bathed in winter sunlight, yet the echoes of yesterday lingered. The air held a stillness I hadn't felt in weeks, like the silence after a long storm, not empty, but full of what had just passed through. I moved slowly, barefoot on cool tile floors, coffee in hand, letting the warmth of the cup ground me. Every corner of the condo felt mine, not just legally, emotionally, spiritually, finally. There were no sounds of drawers slamming, no scent of someone else's perfume clinging to the air. Just lemon oil from the wooden table I'd cleaned the night before and the faint hum of the fridge. Peace has a sound, I realized. And it was this. I passed by the Christmas chair, the one Delora had claimed for so long, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a warning sign. It was just a chair. I pushed it in with one hand, slow and certain, and smiled. The phone buzzed on the counter. Grant. Can I stop by? Just me. Coffee? I typed back. Sure, bring your own mug. He arrived 20 minutes later, wore that sheepish grin that used to charm his way out of messes when we were kids. Today, it didn't land the same, but I appreciated the effort. He didn't sit right away, just stood there, looking around like he was seeing the place for the first time. It's quiet, he said. It should have been this way the whole time. I know, he nodded. I should have said something sooner. I let the pause sit there. I wasn't interested in guilt. I wanted ownership, responsibility. I didn't understand how deep it went, he added, or how much she took from you, how much we all did, just by staying quiet. You do now, I said. That's something. We talked, slowly, like people rebuilding a bridge that had burned, brick by brick. No dramatic apologies, no promises, just the kind of quiet honesty that had been missing for years. By the time he left, I felt something shift, not in him, necessarily, but in me. I no longer needed his validation. His acknowledgement felt like a bonus, not a necessity. That's how I knew I was healing. Over the weekend, a few neighbors dropped off cookies and casseroles. No one said anything directly about what happened, but the looks said plenty. There were nods of respect, short conversations that lingered a little longer than they used to. The social current had changed. I didn't see Delora again that week, but I heard the ripples. Someone mentioned she'd stepped back from the church committee. Someone else said she'd canceled her regular lunch group. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. Consequences don't always need volume. Sunday evening, I sat down with a notebook, just lined paper and a pen, and started writing down the dates, the lessons, the choices. Not because I needed to remember, but because I wanted to remind myself what I was capable of. There's a kind of power in restraint, in letting someone dig their own pit and simply stepping aside. Midweek, a letter arrived from the HOA. Formal language, but the meaning was clear. All claims against me were dismissed. Final. No further action required. I folded the paper neatly and slipped it into the back of a drawer. On Thursday, I visited the small garden outside the building. The rosemary bush Delora once said I'd never manage to keep alive was thriving, full and fragrant. I knelt beside it, pressed 2 fingers into the soil. Firm, grounded. Back upstairs, I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and stood by the window. The city moved on outside, cars passing, dogs barking in the distance, life doing what life does. It felt different now, not because the world had changed, but because I had. I glanced back at the chair by the table again, still empty, still waiting. But this time, it didn't haunt me. It honored me. This space, this silence, this strength. I'd earned every inch of it. Not by shouting, not by slamming doors, but by standing firm when everything tried to push me out. The phone buzzed again. A message from a cousin I hadn't heard from in years. Saw what happened. Just wanted to say, good for you. I replied simply, thanks. Took me long enough. Then I sat down, sipped my coffee, and let the quiet wrap around me like a warm coat.